All right, how's it going, everybody? Thanks for tuning in today. My name is Tim,
And I'm Matt.
and today is our collective top five best Halloween movies. But before we do that, let's do some introductions real quick. My name is Tim. I have my own channel on YouTube that you're more than welcome to check out, where I go more in depth on different stuff with music, a little bit of movies here and there, but nothing too fancy. I'm more of the music all the time kind of guy. And yeah, you can go ahead and check that out. And Around the Horn, over to you.
So I'm going to be doing mostly movies on my YouTube channel that you can check out. Maybe a little bit of music with soundtracks, things like that, but mostly diving into movies, think pieces, rankings, things like that. And yeah, so be sure to check that out. That'll be a lot of fun.
All right, awesome. So, yep. So what we're going over today, first one on the docket is again, like we said, top five Halloween movies. Now, Halloween is probably one of, if not both of ours, I'd say like one of our favorite holidays.
Oh yeah.
The one thing that Halloween kind of goes hand in hand with is making really good movies, like whether it's horror, whether it's just something to watch around the holidays. There's always something that kind of gets you excited for the season. Whether if it makes you scared is an entirely different piece. But like when we're jumping on here, we're gonna go through different stuff spanning horror, spanning like more heartwarming stuff. Um, but first, we're gonna start this off. Matt, you said you wanted to read off some certain honorable mentions that you had.
Yeah, so I am a very indecisive person, and so when I was tasked with coming up with the top five, of course I had to come up with my top eight. So here are some honorable mentions, I guess. And God, there's just it's so hard, but I think out of the ones that I had, honorable mention number one is Dracula because you have to have an original. You have to have an OG Halloween movie, and it's probably my favorite. Um, and then The Shining, which it's so hard to put on the honorable mentions, but it's so long and so heavy that I think I wouldn't be able to watch it all the time. But man, is it an experience! Like if you haven't seen The Shining, just watch it once. It's definitely it brings you in for sure.
Oh yeah,
And
definitely.
then one more, just that I had to put in, and the only reason it's in the honorable mentions is I literally just watched it last night. Hereditary. It is one of the first horror movies I have seen in a while that is recent that's actually legitimately scared the crap out of me. It is really, really good. Go see Hereditary if you haven't already. It's on Amazon Prime. So those are my honorable mentions.
Let's get into the list proper. So for me, I'm going to start off with one that's it's not exactly horror. It's not something that you would think of when you think of something that scares you. Maybe if you're a little kid. But the first one I have for a Halloween movie is Nightmare Before Christmas. And Nightmare Before Christmas, I know people there's contentious of whether it's a Halloween movie or a Christmas movie. I'm one of those guys who thinks why can't it be both? Um, but at the same time, it's one of those things where every time around Halloween, there's something about it that it's like it has a little bit of comfort for me whenever it comes on. Whether it's individual scenes that I see on cable if it comes on to like just the different songs it has from Halloween to What's This, which is still one of my favorite songs to play around Halloween, even though it's technically a Christmas song because he is talking about Christmas. But it's just one of those heartwarming kind of things that you always look forward to around the Halloween season. I always find myself, it's between that and your typical like your Peanuts like great pumpkin
Oh
Charlie
god,
Brown. It's
yeah.
it's like it's one of those. It's on par. It doesn't hold that sentimental value that Peanuts does, but like it's has that same kind of vibe
Yeah.
to it.
Oh yeah. God, Great Pumpkin. That's the first any holiday. That's the Charlie Brown one's the first one we watch.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like you get to know like a bunch of these characters and really like I it's spooky when you're a little kid, but like when you see them like when you see the visuals as an adult, you see like they're really creative visuals, especially from it's very Tim Burton influence kind of thing
Hmm.
that they do. So it's really cool just the way that everything plays off each other and has this really like gothic kind of thing, but at the same time, it's like it's very whimsical and
Yeah.
and very much like it's one of those things where you look around, and you're like, I don't really want to be in this space, but then once you go along with the movie, you're like, oh yeah, this sounds like a lot of fun, you know?
Yeah.
Do you have any on there that's kind of run that gamut?
If, Young Frankenstein. I had to put it on this list. I've only seen it about once or twice, but it is very charming. I love it. It definitely gives you that, if you're into the black and white aesthetic, of like the Halloween thing, but you want to watch something that's a little bit more modern. Young Frankenstein's very funny. It is a Mel Brooks movie, so it's got all those little gags and funny moments and puns and everything. But it's really good. It's a little. It's one of those that it's a little. I don't want to say niche,
Yeah.
but it's definitely got some jokes that it's like you're either gonna laugh or not. But I think it's a really good one. It's really fun to watch. And I don't know, it's just something about it, that it's just when you're decorating, you just kind of want to watch it to have on the background, and it's a big family movie, I think too. It's funny comedy, so that's my number five.
Like the black and white does have its own little like have its place, I suppose, just for
Mhm.
like the way that it takes you back to a certain period.
Yeah.
And the one thing that it's funny you should say it because going back a ways now, for my number four pick, I'm going back to like the real OG kind of like horror movies, and I feel like in terms of like something that every fan who's into horror should watch, it does not get more essential than Psycho.
Oh yeah.
Because Psycho, it's got the kind of like the tragic story in what is happening with not the title character but Norman Bates, and the way that he seems like throughout the movie he seems like such a kind of like a likable character, but then when like you turn around and you know Hitchcock's such a master at this. When everything's like kind of revealed for what it is, it's that aha moment where you don't know how to feel inside. Like it's definitely frightening, and it was certainly I imagine this was 63
I
something.
think something like that.
Yeah,
It was
so
definitely 60s.
yeah, because like there is a fair amount of bloodshed in the movie, and it catches me off guard today just to see some of the stuff, and I imagine it would have been like horrific in the '60s when like you weren't showing this kind of stuff in a. This is like this is the way that I look at it in cinema. It's like it's pre Godfather. It's pre things where you're so used to seeing like all this like blood and gore and all that stuff like on a grand scale. So like it's one of the things that really catches you off guard and like you leave you leave the movie with like a kind of unsettling feeling, which it's one of those things where it doesn't scare you like that much in retrospect. Sometimes like it scares you more in the sense that it gives you a little bit of a jolt,
Yeah.
and that's what I think like Halloween movies like have a good handle on. It's just it gives you little things like it doesn't necessarily have to be frightening. It can be just shocking and still it makes you jump a little bit.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. We seem to be overlapping a lot because that's actually my number one is Psycho, and I think the reason for that is because that's one of those that kind of like Hereditary when I saw it last night, but Psycho is one of the first I saw of these that you watch it and you are in it for the whole thing, and when it's over, you're good. It's still you're creeped out by it for a while, but it's not like it really affects you that much, like you were saying. Like you're still good, but for that hour and a half, you're in. And I love hour and a half movies because you're in and you're out, and it's so good. Nothing drags, and so I think for that reason, and I mean obviously it's Hitchcock, so it's very well made, and all these little moments of tension and build up that you wouldn't necessarily think or like, okay, yeah, I'll put that in a horror movie because it doesn't seem like it would make it scary, but it does. So if you haven't seen Psycho, go see it, find it somewhere because it's really good. Obviously, you probably know the shower scene, something like that, but there's a lot. There's at least three other moments that I can think of that honestly almost creep me out more, just because we've seen the shower scene all so many times. There are so many other sequences in this movie that are like even creepier, just psychologically. But just the way, I mean, and I love just on a story level the idea that the main character maybe isn't the main character. We don't know. It's just like you're thrown for a loop. It almost doesn't even follow story structure. It's so weird, but it's so good. Go see Psycho.
Sometimes like Hitchcock's MO is like you look at some of his movies and you're like it shouldn't work on paper, but like this man's a master at his craft, and it's just like
Right.
it kind of works. And like also I couldn't help but think like you were telling speaking about the shower scene. I wonder like as a music guy how many people know the music of the shower scene and don't actually know
Oh, I'm
what it
sure.
details because everyone if they don't know what the shower scene is they at least know that violin that dun
Oh, yeah.
dun dun
Oh, I'm
uh,
sure.
yeah, because like I'm much more of a music guy, and like you respond to sound pretty well, in that in that respect. But speaking of that, that actually leads right into what my number three pick is. Um, there's an important emphasis that I have on sound. Okay,
Hmm.
and in terms of sound, sometimes no sound can be so much more scary
Oh yeah.
than just having a really kick-ass horror movie score. And in terms of something that gets a lot out of not using that much sound at all, it has to be A Quiet Place, because A Quiet Place, they took what is essentially a very very simple premise, and of not being of taking out speaking, because um, these predators are very sensitive to sound, and when they actually go in and like you know are they go through all the different dynamics that come around not making sounds, it's so much more. It's it's cool to see how like everything plays out, but um it's more interesting to see like how they deal with things if something were to move around them that makes a noise, and um how each noise, when it happens, it could be something as innocent as like knocking something over, and
Hmm.
yet it sounds like right in the eardrum,
Oh yeah.
because it's like
Yeah.
it's so weird when when they hear a noise, it's probably it catches them off guard as well, because they are so used to not hearing.
Hmm.
So and it also has a fantastic directorial direction of Mr. John Krasinski of The Office fame, um, which is weird because him starring in something as like when he would go on to do Jack Reacher, I didn't think I would see all this out of Jim,
Yeah.
because
I
that's
love him.
just
Oh, good job.
the guy who would always sit around here and just nonchalantly make faces at the camera when something was going awry.
Yeah.
So, but the dude definitely has a very good touch behind the camera,
Oh yeah. Seriously. I
and
mean,
can really hold his own as a guy who can do the actor director thing well. I think of people like Ben Affleck, and
hmm
your Clint Eastwoods, and people like that, and John Krasinski can really hold his own under those kind of constrictions, and can really he really pumped out something that's very non-characteristic as from what he did on The Office, but still very good and very unsettling for a
oh
horror-based
yeah.
film.
And I think something about A Quiet Place is that a lot of people they love it, and I think it was one of the best films of last year. Like I like besides if it wasn't for Infinity War, uh, A Quiet Place would have been my number one movie, and I think it was great because a lot of people are like, oh well, there's this continuity about this, or how do they get water, or how do they? Well, yeah, but it that doesn't seem to be something that you really think about too much when you're watching it because you're so into it. I mean, like I couldn't even eat my popcorn; I was too loud. And it was funny, with that. But I think it's more about, like I was saying with a couple of the other movies, the experience of watching it and it being drawn into it. That you're not exactly always thinking about these little, mechanics of how are they doing this, how are they doing this. It's more about the family and their struggles. And I think personally, even if not everything makes sense in terms of how they're living like this, like these little details, it didn't really take me away from the movie. Which is, I mean, if it doesn't take you away from the movie, then I think it's okay. You can debate about it afterwards. It's totally fine, because they are very viable, like what's the word? Very
It's like something that's very, even if it's something that's very like horrible that's happening, you still have that kind of like you still have that little bit of like, oh yeah, but the kids are still there, and it's got a little heart to it, and like it's not like A Quiet Place is also has a distinction. It doesn't have to be on 100 all the time, because there are some little lighthearted
mhm.
kind of moments that definitely that you definitely think of like, oh, this is the family, and this is how they work and how they play off each other, and
Yeah.
while also keeping you in this kind of dense environment.
Right. All right. Well, moving on to my number four. We're gonna kind of go with a throwback, not so far back as to Psycho, or Dracula, but for all my the people who are my age out there, around the 22, Halloween Town. Um,
Yes.
and not every movie for Halloween has to be scary. I mean, because this is one of my favorites, obviously for nostalgia purposes. Um, because I went back and I watch it every year. It's one of those that I watch every year, and I went back and watched it this year, and we can be honest, it doesn't age well. it I can say this: it barely uses CGI. That's a compliment, I guess.
I mean, like, I mean, right now, like, the state that
Practical
we,
effects.
yeah, practical effects. That's pretty respectable, you know.
Yeah, but all the creatures and like I hear that music and it just takes me back to literally to Halloween Town and to this Halloween feeling of being a kid and trick or treating and so I mean it's a really fun one. And I think the series as a whole is great. We're not going to talk about the fourth one. I think the series as a whole is great. Actually, really weird side tip. I realized that the Halloween Town and the Indiana Jones movies almost kind of line up in tone. Like the first one's the fun original one everyone loves.
Yeah.
The second one's really dark. The third one is lighthearted and funny, and then the fourth one everyone hates.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah,
if you think about it.
maybe, like, we have like a side by side thing, like
You're right.
make a new resurgence of the Halloween Town and make it like
Oh my
kind of
god.
on par with the
Just
Indiana
have
Jones.
just have Shia LaBeouf in it. No,
Oh
but
god.
anyway, so yeah, Halloween Town. If you get excited over Disney Channel movies, you obviously you're gonna love Halloween Town. You know it. You've already seen it. So um, yeah, so I love it. Oh, and God, this isn't on my list, but I just remembered that in terms of Halloween movies, don't look under the bed.
Like,
If you know what I'm talking about, you guys who watched these movies when you were younger, that was too much for kids.
and now moving on to my number two, kind of like a quiet place. Mine is called Unfriended. Okay, and that one was it came out a while back. I would believe it was 2014. And it's a horror movie about a ghostly presence that is haunting um, the Skype call of these four teenagers, and it has a it's kind of cool. It kind of does almost the the 12 Angry Men approach, where the entire movie takes place on a laptop screen, and kind of like has that very contained thriller aspect to it.
Hmm.
Not to say that 12 Angry Men is a contained thriller, like as a kind of thing, um, but Unfriended really helps, like, lets the idea of something haunting your computer sink in, which obviously today that's really a disquieting thought, because a lot of people have so much rely so much on electronics to help get them through their whole day, so that now that the thing's possessed
Hmm.
and it's hijacking these people's calls, emotionally or what have you, because like the best moments in these movies are, they're the ghost that's haunting this computer is trying to pick off these people one by one,
Hmm.
and when they're, when something spooky or out of the ordinary happens, the best kind of thrill is when you just see these people looking off to the other side. It's very much the Jaws effect in that, where you see them and they're just staring at whatever this horrifying thing is, and that really does a great job in building it up, and not like, the Jaws thing is like you build up this big threat because you didn't show the shark.
Right.
And it's very much like that when you look at it and you don't see what's coming. What's the scary part is, but in your head you're just that much more scared, because you know they can show whatever they want on screen, but what's happening in your head may be far more scarier than what they actually show.
Oh yeah.
So,
Oh, yeah.
so it's like, so it's very much, it's very like disquieting, and know, it's also, it takes a different approach, where you think that, like, something nowadays might not be like a Jason Voorhees, or a Freddy Krueger. Yeah, those are horror movie icons, but like that might not be that scary to people who have access to the internet and can see stuff that's far gruesome than what they've done. So the
True.
idea that they're stuck on a computer, and that person who wants to possess them is on that computer, that could be scarier than a Jason,
Hmm.
that's coming to kill you. That's like, not only does this person have access to kill you, but they have access to everything that you've done.
Mm-hmm.
And in technology's run about how you can't really escape it,
Mm-hmm.
and it's disquieting, but it also makes you think a lot.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. Like I hadn't seen another movie like that was so contained that made me actually entertained like that.
Oh
So
yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I think you talking about that. I haven't seen this movie, but I think if you watch Unfriended and you like it, I would also recommend Searching because that seems like it was sort of kind of like almost the same deal as being like on the internet and through the eyes of being on the computer the whole time, and so that seemed really interesting and kind of seemed in the same range as that.
yeah.
So I think it's a thriller too. So I would definitely check that out.
Mm.
So I'm gonna go and skip to my number two because we kind of already talked about it, but I also love Nightmare Before Christmas, and I think that I mean you kind of touched on most of the stuff already. I mean the songs I think are the best part of it. Obviously, I mean even for me it's one of those movies that I like the beginning a little bit more than the rest of it, and I think I've found that if I like a movie for its beginning rather than its middle or end, I think it's because I like seeing the world and being introduced to that world and everything. This same thing goes for Sorcerer's Stone, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, um, Jurassic Park, movies like that, where it's like you get to see this whole world, and it's just exciting always being introduced again to that world. And for this one, we get a really, like darkly exciting and darkly I don't know, beautiful introduction to this world through like well, this is Halloween song and right into the next best song, Jack's Lament. I mean, that's such a good song, and they just all have this kind of little creepy undertone that's just fun though. It's like this really cool, like the town hall meeting song. I love that little riff that it has because it's creepy but like fun creepy.
Yeah.
And so they just do a really good job with that, and it's a nice little story that it's just self-contained and it's fun, and everybody loves the aesthetic. It's like this kind of I don't want to say cult classic, but like this thing that a lot of people pick up, and yeah. So I mean, it's just a little it's a fun movie. It's maybe not for like real little kids.
Yeah.
It can get a little creepy looking, like these heffalump looking things, but yeah. So I mean, although fun fact, I was watching behind the scenes on it, and Christopher Lee, rest in peace, was reading the narration for the original poem Tim Burton wrote, and it scarily sounds before they kind of adapted it into a movie. It scarily sounds like a Halloween version of The Grinch. Like it was almost a little ripped off.
The way that I always see that because I'm like, dude, this is like Grinch if there was like a whole city
Yeah,
of them,
yeah,
and then they're like, and not mean spirited, like
yeah.
they're not mean spirited, like they're all like they're jolly in their own way, but they're also just like, yeah, I'm gonna do this, but we should have fun while doing it,
Right.
But yeah, it's one of those things where like once it ages very well, it ages very well. Every time you watch it, you always kind of feel a little bit more festive in the season of Halloween.
And just like a shout out to all claymation movies because the more I've watched them, the more appreciation I have for them. Because my God, I would never have the patience.
The production hours alone. Oh
I mean, it's an hour and 15 minutes, and it took them like 2-3 years to make or something like that. I mean, it's and the product, the claymation movies that are coming out, this like more recently with things like Leica, I can't even imagine. Like I know Kubo and the Two Strings, every single strand of hair was made, and I mean that's insane.
Oh my
but
God,
pardon my phone in the back.
Now I know that claymation is like it's a labor of love because there's a lot of work that goes into that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's like it's so strange the way that that Halloween kind of plays out because like you've got like on one hand you got the stuff that's like really gets you like, oh yay, fun, and then like there's the the other side of it, which is the horror kind of stuff, which in its own way is kind of endearing sometimes when you actually look at it.
Mm-hmm.
And moving right along, going off that with horror, there's my number one pick. It's actually has something in common with A Quiet Place because they both come from directors who have started in comedy. John Krasinski starting with A Quiet Place, and for my number one pick, it's by the director Jordan Peele. Started off with the comedy duo Key and Peele, and now is a very famous director. And my number one film is Us, because Us is one of those movies. It's probably one of my favorite movies to come out this year.
Okay.
Um, it's one of those movies that where I left the theater stunned. I was like, I literally, and you went with me. It was like it was
Yeah.
one of those things where like we both left, and I was speechless. I did not know what to say at the end
Yeah.
because like, and and that's nothing. Like the ending is phenomenal, but like the entire movie leading up to that is just so like it gets you on edge, and it gets
It's
you all.
original.
It's so original. It's like it takes the idea of like what people commonly think of as like something like a doppelganger
Hmm.
that you would have in real life, and takes that to the nth degree. It's one of those things where it's so I put that in number one spot because it's also kind of endearing because since Jordan Peele, he's got his start in comedy. This movie, like while being very scary in places and being very unsettling in places, it can also be really funny. Like
In
like
like a terrible
in
way.
a terrible way. Like even like Winston Duke, who
Hmm.
plays the
He
father,
was great.
he's great in this movie, and he's also like he is trying to survive throughout this entire film, and is probably one of the funniest people in the entire film. Not in his and not in his like way of getting out of things, but just his mannerisms and just the way he has that total like dad energy. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
He's got that and Lupita Nyong'o does probably one of like her greatest performances that I've seen her ever do. Because like you also have to do this like with doppelgangers, the entire cast has to do a dual performance, which is it's very hard to think about, actually having to, like each of your actors. Okay, now you're playing this person. I thought, and then having them go back and forth constantly, trying to,
Hmm.
make sure that everything falls in line. And I find it very interesting, and also the idea that this is coming from one of the greatest minds of comedy in the past,
Yeah.
in the past decade, makes it all the more interesting to me because, like, I remember, um, I remember I was watching an interview actually with Jordan Peele, and he was talking about what the interviewer asked him something to the effect of like, "What made you want to do horror as a genre?" And he said, "Well, I had spent so many years doing comedy. I love I love making people laugh, and get that like I'm a sucker for getting people to laugh, but what's really cool is to get someone to laugh and then 2 minutes later get them to go and have them
Right.
really catch their breath and have them really get very uneasy. I just it was like I want someone to have like a really gut laugh, and then the next second be like, oh no, don't do that, like
Mm.
and I feel like it's one of it's my number one for the sole reason that it's one of my favorite movies to come out this year, and it's one of those things where this is a horror movie that is for people who may not think of horror as a genre they might be into. This is something that could expose them to the genre
Yeah.
and actually help them, start to think about, oh, maybe, yeah, I left here and I was scared, but maybe that's not, like maybe scared can be a good thing in certain
Oh yeah.
situations when you come out of it and you come out kind of better for it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
For sure. I
yeah,
mean, I definitely I definitely thought as a story. I mean, I could go off on us as a whole other video, so I won't go into it too deeply. But I definitely thought story wise, Get Out was more consistent, but this was definitely an experience and makes you think the whole way through. And I think that's what makes it a really good horror movie, good Halloween movie
definitely.
to watch because just again the experience. And I think with horror movies that's more important, a little more important sometimes than the story, as long as it makes sense. Um, and I say that because a lot of horror movies are actually getting really good nowadays because the story is better, because it's more compelling. But again, I think overall, as long as you are not brought out of it by plot holes or story elements, whatever, I think the experience is really what counts, especially the first time seeing it, which is why that made it a really good movie, even though I was confused a little bit at the end and it didn't explain things as well as it maybe could have. Um,
Oh yeah, like
but I do think experience wise, that is a great number one choice.
nowadays, like there's stuff that you can rely on, jump scares and stuff like that,
Yeah.
and jump scares, they're like if I had to equate it to like a bad comedy, jump scares are like the fart joke. Like
Yep.
yeah, you're gonna get a reaction out of all of it, but like it might not be the reaction that you want out of an audience.
Yeah.
So like, and it's really weird that like when it comes to the most important part, which really is the story, us kind of like has the whole deal kind of going for it. Being unsettling, but at the same time, you're still with it, trying to figure out like, okay, how is this gonna happen? How is
Right.
this gonna happen?
Yeah.
Yeah, but definitely.
So wrapping up with my number 3 because I was going kind of out of order. You know me, I'm a mainstream kind of guy. By now you've probably gotten that. So my number 3 is Hocus Pocus because it's fun. Let's be honest. Yeah, it's. I actually didn't realize it because this and Nightmare Before Christmas were two of them that I really didn't care about at first, and then I kind of started watching them a little more and more, and it's funny because I didn't realize when I went to put it on the other day, I saw the Rotten Tomato score was like 33%, and I was like, "Are you kidding me?" And then I guess I was like, really look at it, and I was like, "Okay, I guess I do see it."
Yeah.
When it first came out, it's just become such a cult classic with people because it's fun. It's it's cheesy for sure, and I think that's part of what makes it fun. And I'll actually get into this in another video that I want to do at some point about our bad movies or just okay movies. Can they be okay? Can they be good? Is that's just what they're for. But I think that Hocus Pocus is a really great movie for everybody to watch at Halloween. It gets you into the Halloween spirit. It's not scary. It's just it's that Halloween. I don't know, cheer. I don't know if that's even a thing.
Yeah.
And I think that it really does. I mean, Bette Midler and the witches, they're very fun to watch and interact. There are some really great moments. Like I love all the moments with the bullies. I think that's pretty hilarious
Yeah.
because they're just really stupid. But yeah, I mean, overall, I think it's just a really fun movie. I can't really say much else because that's pretty basically sums it up as to why I think it's one of my personal favorites every year to watch and get you into the spirit. You want to go trick or treating, you think about that night of Halloween and how exciting it is, and there you go.
So yeah, thank you guys all for tuning in. This has been our Halloween special for what we have, and I think coming soon we'll probably I would say stay tuned for about a week's time. We want to see if we can get these out weekly.
Yeah.
And between next week we're going to be going through it many different topics. Like we're going to be doing some stuff on deleted scenes, and we're going to be doing stuff on different think pieces on whether it be different fandom stuff or maybe movie scores.
We're starting up both of our channels pretty soon, so we wanted to get this out, at a timely manner, obviously because Halloween's next week, and we wanted just for you guys to get to know a little bit about us and our channels. But yeah, so that'll all be coming out this week, and we want to try to get out maybe one or two a week if we can for you guys, and yeah, so we're hoping this is going to be fun, and we get to put in a little bit of our input and have a good time.
All right, yeah, absolutely. So, yep. So for now, we're gonna be signing off. We'll see you next week. I've been Tim,
I'm Matt.
and we'll catch you guys later.